Hey everybody, it's Larry Lursey. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to take a look at Luminar 4. Now, Luminar 4 is a standalone or a Photoshop plugin that gives you all kinds of photo editing capabilities, and we're going to take a look at it, kind of an overall look at a lot of the tools that it has in it, if it's something that's worth getting or not, and just kind of give you an overview of the product. There is a link in the description if you'd like to download a trial and kind of play along with us. At the end of the video, I'll even give you a discount code you can use to save a little money if you decide to purchase the software. And so if you're ready to go, let's roll the intro. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. Now, you can use Luminar in Photoshop as a plugin, or you can use it as its own standalone program. I'm more comfortable working in Photoshop, so I'm going to be using it as a Photoshop plugin for these tutorials. Now, I picked these two images to try and work with today. One being just kind of your standard travel type photo, and then a studio portrait. So we've got two very different images, which I thought would be a good test of what the software can do and kind of run it through the paces and get a good overall look at some of the capabilities. So we'll start with this shot right here. Now, one thing I always like to do, whether I'm using Luminar, Topaz, or just working in Photoshop in general, is I like to not be working on the basic layer. I'm going to come down and make a copy of that, and we will call this Luminar. So now whatever we do here, if we decide we don't like it, we've still got the original image sitting here. So we're going to basically work off this copy layer right on top. So I think we're ready now. We'll jump in. We will do Filter, Luminar 4. All right, so here we are in the software. Got our image right here, and one of the things you're going to notice as we go through here, which is one of the things I noticed when I started messing around with this software, is it does a lot of things, and it's a very broad tool, and we're not going to go into a ton of detail on all those pieces. What I will do is probably have some follow-up videos where we go into some detail on some of my favorite tools within the software. But what we're going to try and do here is kind of give you an overview of what all the software does and how you can use it on a couple of different images. So that's what we're shooting for here. And we'll start up here with looks. Looks are basically the presets in Luminar, and you've got them down here. You can go just hover over one and it will change the image up top for you. And of course, that's the easy solution. If you decide, you know what, I really like this, you pick one and go with it. That's certainly the easy route. You've got down here different categories. This obviously is landscape, but you've got them that are more dramatic, portrait. You can even save your own. We've got essentials here, which is kind of a overall, should work on a whole bunch of different images. And kind of just depends on what type of thing you want to do. And so you play around with those presets. And what I would recommend doing is picking a preset that gets you close to what you want, and then from there start playing with some of the tools here on the right to fine-tune it. Now, you could just start over here and start working through the tools one at a time, and that certainly nothing wrong with that, but it's a bit overwhelming because you can see we've kind of got 4 different categories here. All these tools here, we jump to this one, we've got all these tools, these, and all those. So it's a lot of different things, and so I've found that using one of these to get us close is kind of the smart way to go. Let's just start out with this AI Landscape Enhancer, just to get something on the image here. Now, one thing that you will see up here is, and we can zoom in right here using the plus and minus. We'll come in a tiny bit right there. You can click on the little eye here to go back and forth when you're holding it down. That's where we started. This is where we are now. So already it's got a little more punch to it. You've also got this little slider option where you can do the magical back and forth thing and compare it like that. Kind of depends on which style you like of previewing. So we'll start with that right there. And then I want to jump to, when I look at this image, I think one of the weak points of this image is the sky. It was just kind of a overcast day, not much going on there. So I would probably start with the sky on this one. So we would go here to the creative, And we've got sky replacement and augmented sky. We're going to do sky replacement. And you've got a whole list of different skies here that you can use. You can even load your own custom sky in here. I'm just going to go with a sunset. I think that would be nice. And there you go. It's not only added the sunset here, but you can see it's given it a little bit of a warmer cast everywhere else. And definitely adds to the realism. Now, it's worth noting at this point that when you are adding something like this, you know, it's a pretty big element you're adding to an image that you did not photograph. I think you've kind of got to proceed with caution as to whether this is something that you are 100% claiming is your work at this point. You know, I certainly would never enter an image that I had used one of these skies in any sort of a competition, or probably even try and sell it as client work, because it's not my work. And so if this was an image that I really liked and wanted to put up in my office or something like that, I would much rather have this image than that image. So I think you just gotta kind of use your own best judgment on something like this, just something to keep in mind. And we'll probably do a whole nother video on the whole sky replacement thing, because I think it's one of the coolest tools that you have in Luminar. So once we've dropped this in, we're not done entirely. We've got the horizon blending here, which we can use. And what this will do is help make sure that if there were clouds underneath, that it doesn't start looking weird that you've got double clouds. Our sky was a little easier, as you remember, because see, there was almost nothing down at the horizon, so there's not much competing with it. We can also play with the horizon positioning by edging it up or down a little bit. This is helping us here. You will notice because we've got some of this yellow that's overlapping the umbrella, and by sliding it up a tiny bit, we're getting it off of that umbrella, and looks a little more natural. Now, if you're looking carefully, you will notice that we've got a flagpole here that part of it has. Let's turn this off. Go back to our slider here. We've got this flagpole here that really blends in with the sky and disappears once we put the sky in. Definitely something we would need to fix, and we would do that by masking it out. And you can see we've got a mask feature over here where we can mask that out, but we're going to hold off on that for now just because it's a little more advanced, and I want to get through a few other features that we have here in the software. But that's something that we can fix, but it's the type thing you have to watch for whenever you're dropping in a sky in any image, is that you don't have it bleeding over into places it's not supposed to be. So just something to keep in mind that you'd need to go back and fix later. A lot of times I will go back and use this relight scene afterwards too. It just somehow seems to give things a little more blend feel to them. Okay, so I think we're good with our sky replacement. From there, you can do, you know, any other number of things that you want to do, and some of them it's just a matter of going in and looking at them. You've got this dramatic, which sometimes helps. Slide that over a little bit. So we can take a look at some of the other ones. If we go here into the essentials, you've got your AI enhance, which if you move through here, you see it just gives things a little more detail and snap. We could, now that we have a sky, we can even try this sky enhancer. Push a little more of that in there. It's pretty good. Another thing that might benefit this image is the landscape enhancer. And you've got dehaze, golden hour, foliage enhancer. We're going to go for golden hour because we're going for kind of that sunset look, and it's going to kind of give things a little bit of a nice warm glow, which I think works nicely. Perfect. And as you can see, you just have so many different tools here. Again, up here is your essentials. This is kind of your colors, lightening, darkening things, sharpening, noise. The creative is more that artsy type stuff where you're giving it more of a dreamy look or adding textures, things like that. The portrait mode here is mostly going to be used on portraits, as the name would imply, and we'll do that on the next image. And then the pro, you can only use this if you're a pro. Well, I don't know if that's true, but this is going to be some of your things like dodging and burning, color enhancer, things like that. So you've got a ton of different tools here, and like I said, part of the problem to me is it's almost difficult to decide what it is that works best on an image, because there's so many different things. It's really easy to go crazy and overdo it. But if we look at this image just as an example, and we go from there to there, I think it's not even close. That this image is so much more exciting. And if we decide, this is something that we really love, we want all of our images to kind of have this type of a feel, or maybe even you did a whole bunch of shots at this same scene, like from slightly different angles, and you want them all to have the same look, we can come down here and do Save New Look, and we'll call this, I don't know, Sunset Harbor. And then right here under the user Luminar looks, there it is, Sunset Harbor, so we can apply that to another image later on. So you would go through, decide which of these things you want to do. When you're done, you're going to hit apply. And once it's done processing, you'll find yourself back in Photoshop. And here's where it's really great that we've got this setting up here right above the basic images. We can see that before and after. If we look at it and decide we went too far, we can pull down this opacity. One thing that you can even do is play with the blending modes. And sometimes putting a different blending mode on it will give it a even cooler look. But in this one, we're going to stick it on normal. I think everything's pretty good how it is. One thing I would suggest doing is, at this point, I would go back and rename this, what did we call it, Sunset Harbor? Whatever you named that special look, that custom look, so that if you pull up this Photoshop file later on and said, oh, I love how I did that one, you'll know that it was the Sunset Harbor preset. So that's a cool little trick you can do to remember what it was you did to it, because there is nothing quite like the trouble you will have trying to recreate something like this a month later when you have no idea what presets and things you used. It's a big pain. So this is a huge lifesaver if that happens for you. So there's a look at a landscape. Now let's jump in and take a look at a portrait. First thing we want to do before we go into Luminar is go ahead and make a copy of the layer. Call it Luminar. Again, I'm probably going to go back and change that, but there's also a chance that I will forget to change it when I come back, so that's why I'm going ahead and naming it now. So we've got that. We will jump into the software. All right, so here we are. We've got this portrait pulled up, and we're going to start out like we did last time with looks. Now, it's got our Sunset Harbor sitting here. We can hover over and see what it would look like out of curiosity, which we know it's probably not going to work, and it does not. I guess if you really liked that crazy saturated look, it'd be okay, but we're not going to go for that. So first thing I would do is change this over to portrait. It'll give us these presets, and we can start going through and just previewing them. Okay, a bunch of different interesting looks, but what I'm going to do this time is we're not going to start with a preset. I want to go over here and just do this one from scratch. So we're going to click on the little face here to bring up the portrait mode. Now let's start with Skin Enhancer. And I'm going to zoom in a little closer so we can see her face a little better. Let's slide this amount over. One thing that I've always found that when you're trying out new software like this, a great way of trying out these sliders is to just take it, go all the way to the side, say, what does Skin Enhancer do? By pushing it all the way to 100, it'll give you way too much of the effect, but you'll see what it is it's doing. It's completely taken away, super softened the skin up. So come bring back to here. Now we can see all the detail back in the skin again. So you would basically have to try and figure out just how soft you want her to be. You don't want her to look like she's made out of porcelain or something like that. So a little bit of that will probably do all you need. She doesn't have much shine, but you can use that shine removal here to work on that. But we're pretty lucky that we don't have that issue here. We've got AI skin defects removal. I'm guessing that's probably if you had a big blemish, it would take that off. It's not really doing much on this image, and I haven't really used it much in the past, to be honest, but probably something to experiment with if you had maybe a teenager with really bad acne or something like that. Perhaps that would work for that. Let's go on to AI Portrait Enhancer. Now there's going to be a whole bunch of different things in here, starting with face light. Again, let's just push it all the way to the right and give it a second to work. You can see it's basically just lighting up the mask of the face there, which, again, don't really need that here. A lot of things are going to be fixing problems that you won't have in the first place if you light and expose properly. So not all the tools are going to be needed all the time. For example, red eye removal. We don't have any red eye, so it's not going to be a problem. You've got eye enhancer here. Let's push it all the way across. You can see what it does. It's bringing out this color in here. Again, it's really easy to go too far with that. But I do like a little of it, so we'll put it at 40. Dark circles, she doesn't have that, but pretty self-explanatory how that would work. Now, you've got the slim face here, which is, kind of, again, a controversial tool. You would have people argue that you shouldn't slim somebody's face, but if you've done portrait photography for any amount of time, I guarantee you've had clients who have said, oh gosh, can you make my face look a little slimmer or something like that. So if that is the case, let's just, again, push it all the way to the side just so we can see what it looks like. Let's slide over. It does make a pretty big difference. It's too much for her, obviously. She doesn't need any face slimming, so we're going to turn that off for her. Enlarge eyes. Again, we'll push it all the way over so we can get an exaggerated look at what it does. It looks absolutely crazy. However, it's one of those tools that you can go over a little bit and it's not nearly as noticeable. You've got improve eyebrows, and what this will do is darken them a little bit, kind of fill in a tiny bit. And one thing I think you want to keep in mind with all these tools is your goal is to, at the end, when someone looks at it, it looks like you haven't done anything. With any retouching, I think you want it to look like you haven't done anything, and then you do the before and after and you're shocked at how different it looks. When you look at an image and it's clear people have done retouching to it, one of the things you'll see all the time is people will whiten the eyes here to the point that they're just glowing. I almost never touch the whites of eyes here, and it's a very telltale sign that something has been over retouched. So everything you do here, do it in moderation. Lip saturation, it's going to be the color that is already there, just giving it a little bit more. Can red them up a little bit. Teeth whitening, again, pretty self-explanatory, but we definitely don't need that here. I think that is plenty for now. We've got this Orton effect, which is basically in the film days, you would basically have two different images you're putting together that what it does is gives kind of a glow effect. And again, we can emphasize this by pushing it all the way to the side, and that looks terrible. But a little bit of it, maybe up to about... let's try 25. We'll give it just a little bit of a glow, which looks nice. Let's do a before and after. And again, when you look at this image, it doesn't look like it's been retouched to death, but you can definitely see the difference. So let's say we like this look. We're going to go ahead and save another look, and we will call it, let's call it Studio Model. Then next time we want to try and get this basic type of look, we can use Studio Model, and that'll get us close. We can always go back and change things. The next image may need more of this or less of this, and you have the power to go back later and change some of those items. Before we move on, let's just take one quick look here into the Pro and stuff that you could mess with here. We've got working with the highlights. You have your shadow contrast. That, again, if you're where you are already when you come into the image, you're not going to need to deal with some of those type things, even dodging and burning. You've got these photo filters where basically you are adding some color. And we'll push it all the way across. You can see it goes crazy. Whatever color you want to give it. Let's say you want to go with this, let's go with the yellow. And you would really have to dial it down, but at low levels it looks kind of interesting, but not really something that we need for this image, just so that you know it's over here. So we've saved this look already. Let's go ahead and apply it and go back into Photoshop real quick. Okay, so here we are back in Photoshop. We've got our layer up here, which we're going to change to Studio Model, and we can check our before and after. And there you go. Now the beauty of having this on its own layer is if we decide we've gone too far, or maybe there's parts that we don't want the effect as much, we've got the ability now to mask out and lower the effect that we've done on the image. Now one thing to keep in mind is on this image, because we were playing around with some of those features, if you do things like slimming the face, or I think we enlarged the eyes a tiny bit, it's not going to match up exactly. And so then if you do something where you say drop the opacity down, it's going to create two different things, which may or may not work for the look you're wanting. But in general, if you've mostly just used the software to warm things up and add a glow and a lot of those type things, then you can play with this opacity to lessen the effect on the image. So either way, it's good having it here so that you know that you've got your basic image down here if you need to go back and start over. So that's an overview of what you can do with Luminar, and as you can see, there's a lot of features. We really only touched on a small fraction of what it does, and we'll have some videos coming up that go into a little more detail in some of the specific parts of the software. If you take a look at the number of features that the software has compared to the price, I think it really is kind of a bargain. There are so many ways that it can help your photo editing that I think you could spend hours just exploring some of the different options, and it really is a nice way to give a creative look to some images maybe that you're struggling with, just can't kind of push them over the edge to make them a little more exciting. If you decide that you'd like to purchase the software, make sure you use the discount code LarryPhoto. And this will give you $10 off, which is a nice savings. Maybe you could use it to buy one of the custom looks or something in the Luminar shop there. But if you haven't already done so, I hope you'll take a second to subscribe. Make sure you click the bell so that you will be alerted when we get new content out, because there's a whole bunch of videos coming out here over the next few weeks, and I want you to be the first to know. But that's all we have for this week. I hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.